Hello, I'm Llewellyn King, the host of White House Chronicle. I'm speaking to you from Houston, Texas, the pulsing heart of the energy industry of the world. This is where it all comes together. And we are covering, and this will be the second episode, a special conference organized by the World Energy Council and its American chapter, the United States Energy Association. With 7 billion people on Earth, we're going to need a lot of food, a lot of water, and a lot of energy.
Many have spoken out on the need to transition to a clean energy future. At Exelon, we are acting. By 2020, we are committed to reducing, offsetting, or displacing more than 15 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually through greening our operations, helping our customers and communities reduce their emissions, and offering more low-carbon electricity in the marketplace. At Exelon, we are taking action and we are seeing results.
And now, the program host, nationally syndicated columnist Llewellyn King, and co-host Linda Gasparello.
Christoph Frei is the Secretary General of the World Energy Council. This extraordinary organization headquartered in London, formed in 1923, that looks across all energy sources and basically has as a philosophy that energy is good for people and doesn't advocate any particular source, any particular technology. Welcome to the broadcast, Christoph.
Thank you.
Did I get it right?
You got it right. We are actually very proud of the fact that we are unbiased, that we are in over 90 countries. We have over 3,000 organizations working with us in those countries. And indeed, we look at policy side, we look at scenarios and technology aspects across the spectrum.
Now, every 3 years you have an enormous meeting and it goes around the world. Where is the next one?
Well, the last one was in Montreal, the next one is in Asia, is in Korea, and we look at Korea as a place where really you can bridge the various parts of Asia.
People who don't know, have never been to a World Energy Congress run by the World Energy Council. What's it like? What's it about?
Think of it as the Energy Olympics. It's kind of the best performance in energy across the spectrum, be it on the renewable side, be it on the oil and gas side, be it on the policy side, be it on the risk management side. They all show off what they can do, and that's a good starting point for dialogue actually on what needs to be done. And I think for us very important is that we bring structure into that discussion by continuity through our processes in the policy assessment, in scenarios again, and make sure that the dialogue leads into consensus.
Energy is changing, isn't it? Now the challenges are different region to region.
It's correct, and I think the critical thing to first say before we say everything is changing is to remember that we come from a place where the industry said we are an industry that needs very long time horizon. We have investments that last for 20, 30, 40, 60 and more years than that. So how can we respond to a changing environment? But we now live in a time where actually changes are quite dramatic. 3 years ago, nobody thought of shale gas. We have electric mobility coming out of basically nowhere. We have obviously the whole renewable industry that has built up momentum over the past years. We see question marks in the smart grid area. Suddenly there is opportunities recognized on that side, and all those elements will affect the industry to a deep extent.
You do studies, very serious academic studies come under the World Energy Council. Tell us about those. What's the methodology? What's the direction? How are they selected? And what is the impact of the studies?
Well, let me pick out two, perhaps the policy assessment and the scenarios. We have, on the one hand, if you look at the policy assessment, I think one of the statements that we heard at our last Congress is we live in a time of highest policy volatility, and that is not helpful to an industry that wants continuity, transparency. They want to operate in a robust framework.
This program normally originates in Washington. We know something about policy volatility, I can assure you.
And I think it's very critical that one actually, it's not our job to say it's good or bad policy, but what is our job to, within that the huge sea of policy volatility, we we can look at policies and ask what works and what doesn't, what is effective and what is not, and provide feedback again on our observations. And that's the first thing that we are doing with the policy assessment. We are discussing various models and providing feedback. An example we looked at in the renewable space, that renewable portfolio standards versus feed-in tariffs, and came out with conclusions that under which conditions one or the other may be stronger. That's one example. In the same policy assessment, we actually want to give feedback to governments where they stand. If you look at what makes, if you say, for investors, one of the critical things, everybody needs investments. We have a multi-trillion, multi-dozens of trillion investment challenge going ahead. And if you want to attract investment, every country needs to attract investment. How do you do that? You can only do it if you have a robust framework. And what makes a framework robust is a question that we are asking with our policy index and sustainability index ranking, where we say there's 3 fundamental pillars. There's the security of supply side, there's the social equity, the affordability side, and there's the environmental viability side. And if you actually, if you neglect one of those 3 pillars, sooner or later you have frustration building up, you will have a lobby building up in that space and disturbing your policy and take it away from being robust. And that's the reason why we have started measuring actually in those 3 dimensions and the various countries and make them comparable. So this is the first tool that we are providing back as a public good. It's on our website, it's for free, we discuss it with policymakers, we bring it back to the attention of the industry as well, and I think that's a very valuable tool to help increase sustainability in the energy sector.
Christoph, it's a great pleasure to have you on the broadcast. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you.
If you have ever had to carry a large container of water, you'll know how heavy it is. Well, part of the glory of the weight of water is that when it falls through a turbine to produce electricity, it does so fabulously well, with remarkably low maintenance and with steady output, assuming that the water is there. To talk about hydroelectricity and the possibility that we might get some more of it is Oskar Sigvaldason, and he is an engineer who spent a lifetime of falling water, if I might say so. Welcome to the broadcast. Have all the dams been built? Are we built out on hydro? Or are there many other possibilities?
There are, based on an estimate carried out a few years ago, it's estimated that about 30% of the economically potentially developable hydro has now been constructed. So there's at least 2/3 that is not developed yet, and that figure is probably conservative.
And environmentalists have turned against hydro, have they not? I know people out in the American West who would like to take all the dams down, return to nature. They don't say what we're going to do for electricity or even for recreation.
Yeah, there was a movement, certainly in the 1990s, which was very much driven by environmentalists, which was to really bring to an end large dam construction, and with that meant large hydroelectric developments, which led to the Commission on Large Dams, which was carried out in the late 90s and into the early part of this decade. That really in many ways served to almost stop the development of hydroelectric development worldwide. There is now a recognition that hydro provides a tremendous contribution to the greenhouse gas challenge in terms of being a competitive opportunity to thermal generation for electricity supply. And it's interesting to note that when we look at the life cycle cost of various forms of electricity, hydro is by far the lowest. It's even lower than nuclear and renewables because once the projects are in operation, there is essentially no greenhouse gases produced, And the projects last a very long time, and they're very low cost.
A while back, there was a lot of excitement about low-head hydro, and for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, low-head hydro is something in a stream.
Right.
And basically a turbine in a stream without a dam.
Right. Yeah.
Is that effective? Is it working?
It's working. There are quite a few installations in the world that
I
are
hear they
based
want
on
to put one in the East River in New York. And there's been talk about putting them in the Danube where it's fast flowing.
Right. And there are installations in Southeast Asia that have in-stream generation. But in-stream generation is expensive because the turbines are very large and the cost per kilowatt is much higher than it is for a conventional high-head power plant.
In Europe and North America, have we lost our stomach for big civil engineering?
I think it was slowed down. It was slowed down because for about 2 decades, the amount of new developments was really slowed down. And it was really based on the premise that we didn't need any more infrastructure. There were very powerful lobby groups for that. I think what is now recognized is that while demand management and energy conservation are very important, demand is going to continue growing, and so there's new infrastructure that's required. The whole process of getting regulatory approval for new projects is made more complicated, but we have to find ways of getting through that process.
Asia is less intimidated by big new projects.
They are less intimidated, and they have systems and processes that allow projects to be built. They don't go through the same hurdles as we do in North America and Europe.
I have tried to promote the idea of constructive intrusion when you build something in nature that at least doesn't deter from its natural beauty,
right,
and may possibly enhance it.
No.
Don't you think we as a people should have more confidence in our ability to do it right? We have in the past.
No, absolutely. And when you look at the TVA system in the United States or the BPA system in the Pacific Northwest, these are magnificent structures. There are beautiful reservoirs. There are multiple purposes. There's flood control. There's navigation, lots of recreation, and so on. So I think the body of opinion is that once you have these systems constructed, that there really should not be a reason to remove them.
I think of all those
Yeah.
beautiful little islands in Venice.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Oskar,
well, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Very nice. We pause for station identification. The audio from this program can be heard on Sirius XM Radio, channel 124, the POTUS channel. We are broadcast every Saturday at 9:30 a.m., 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We are also broadcast around the globe by the Voice of America English Language Service television. I'm joined now by Ruth Smith, Senior Vice President of General Electric Company for Global Government Relations. Welcome to the broadcast. General Electric has been in the energy spotlight because the reactors at Fukushima were General Electric reactors. What was the effect of Fukushima inside your company? Was there a great alarm, doubt, or pride that nothing actually happened?
Well, first concern was to our employees. We actually had 44 GE Hitachi employees and subcontractors on site at Fukushima Daiichi the day of the earthquake and the tsunami. Our first concern was to make sure that they got out safely, which they did. Our second thought was to prepare a situation room where we could be available, all of our engineers, to help assist our customers at TEPCO. And we did that. We stood up a emergency control room in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we are headquartered, and in Tokyo, where Hitachi has its headquarters. And we staffed it 24/7, providing information and support.
Will there be large design changes?
The really exciting news is that GE Hitachi has before the NRC an application for design certification for the latest design, Generation 3 ESBWR, and that is rated
Can you
based
break
on
those initials down for us?
well, it's I call it the excellent, simple, safe boiling water reactor, but that's not what we call it.
You're not in sales by any chance?
No, I'm not. It's called, the ESBWR is the latest design, and it is a passive cooled reactor. So if in the unlikely event that you would lose off-site or on-site power, gravity and circulation would keep that plant running for a minimum of 7 days. And if you're able to add water to that plant, again, without any operator involvement whatsoever, you'd be able to keep that plant operating.
Is GE working on a small reactor?
GE Hitachi is actually committed to a small reactor that is a little different than the light water reactors you've been hearing about. We have spoken to the Blue Ribbon Commission on America's Nuclear Future and with the Congress about developing a reactor called the PRISM reactor. It's a sodium-cooled reactor that was originally developed by the national laboratories. And not only would it create electricity, but it also would use used nuclear fuel. You would basically put the light water fuel through a recycling center where you would be able to get out of that fuel pellet that we always say you only use 5% or so of. You would get 90% of that uranium value out of a recycled fuel pellet and create a new form of
What
fuel.
size would this small reactor be?
It's right around 300 megawatts. So it does qualify as a small modular reactor. And what we would envision is that you would place these recycling centers at locations around the country where you have existing nuclear plants, and you would reduce the need to transport the fuel quite as far.
And this would obviate the need for a permanent repository, like
It actually
or
does
reduce
not.
the need.
You would
like
reduce the need of a
Mountain.
repository. You still would need to store some of the fissionable materials for 3 to 5